What up, y'all? It's your boy R to the A to the S. Yes. Rise here with Receiver Calls Blood, and today I want to talk about what Christian rap can learn from the making of Good Kid, M.A.A.D City. Of course, Good Kid, M.A.A.D City is Kendrick Lamar's album, 2012, very successful, financially very popular. People are talking about it. Even Rapzilla did an article on it, which is really, this is like a spin-off from that article. Little bit different aspect that I'm going to be touching on, though. And so I want to I think there are things, this is not an endorsement for you to say, go out and buy Good Kid, M.A.A.D City, or listen to it. If you don't listen to, industry music, then don't listen to it. But I like to take things and see what things can we learn from those who, quote unquote, had, success, which he's had with this album. What can we learn as Christian rap artists? So that's the whole point and purpose of that. What can we learn? And I want to, this is coming from the Complex magazine. There was an article written on the making of this album. So I want to just take a couple of quotes and discuss something. I would encourage you to read the whole article. It's very long, though. They talked about each and every song on this album. But it's a very good article, and a lot of things you can learn if you're an artist, because there are artists who watch this show, even artists that you know who have watched this show. I ain't gonna name drop it nothing, but anyway, what can we learn? And so I'm gonna take some quotes from this article. This is T-, somebody who worked on art, I think he's a producer. He said, Kendrick and TDE, they know what they're doing. They have a sound that they're going for, and they have a style. That's what's really important. I find with artists these days, they usually want some hot beats to jump on a record, and that's it. Throw it out. That's the mentality. Even in our genre, Christian rap, let's get some hot beats, throw it out. Instead of having our own sound. This album, whether you like it or not, personally, I don't listen to Kendrick Lamar. Brother cuts too much for my taste. But I can say this brother has he has his own style, he has his own sound. And I wouldn't even consider this a radio-friendly album. But he's an artist, so we're going to talk about a little bit later. He's an artist, so he has his own sound. T- goes on and says, with Kendrick, he comes with the whole package. It's not just hot records, it's a sound. That's just one thing I'm used to with Drake, and I'm not a Drake fan, but this is his opinion, with Drake, because Drake has his own sound. We like to package everything. We just don't do hot records. We like to do conceptual projects, conceptual albums. So that's one thing I love about this project. Unique sound, not just going for hot beats or what's popular today, but coming up with your own sound, being different, being unique. And I'm not a fan of Drake, but everybody knows Drake's sound. He has his own style. He has his own sound, whether you like him or not. And that's the same thing with Kendrick, and that should be the same thing with us. We should have our own sound. Individual artists should have their own sound, their own style, who they are, and not just jump on what's popular. Another thing I want to look at, this is a quote from Pharrell that really relates to it as well. This is Pharrell talking about Kendrick. He says his approach to music proves how much of a rebel he is for his art. This guy doesn't care about what's going on the radio. He approached his album the same way Adele and Frank Ocean did. No comment on the Frank Ocean. Those kinds of artists only care about making music that's true to who they are. That's what we need. True to who you are. It's when I listen to some Christian hip hop albums, these East Coast dudes make a Southern album. Who they grow up on that? You're just doing that because that's hot. You're not being true to who you are. Let me leave that alone. Alright, before I start preaching, I'm going to start preaching. Y'all ain't giving me no money, so I'm not going to be preaching for free. I need some money. Anyway, it's a joke. That's a joke. Alright? Anyway, I could not be more honored to be part of this album is return the backpackers for a whole new audience. So again, uniqueness. Another thing that Kendrick, this article talks about is Kendrick says he's told, this is M.A.A.D who was on this album, on the song, I believe it was M.A.A.D City. And this is M.A.A.D said, Kendrick told me he'd always listen to my music and had grown up on my earliest stuff. A lot of young cats don't like to pay homage to the older generation of rap. Seeing that I was sort of like a little influence on him, it was just good to be a part of his album. Kendrick Lamar has respect for those who came before him. And of course, Dr. Dre was an influence on, in this album process. I mean, Kendrick, put it together, but Dre had an influence. You can hear that influence. Not just from him personally, but from the albums that Dre created with the skits. Man, that sounds like Dr. Dre stuff, man. That sounds like NWA. That sounds like an Ice Cube. Ice Cube, he gives a little tribute on the M.A.A.D City song where he quotes Ice Cube. There's a respect for those who came before him. We need the same thing. If you're an artist, you need to have that same attitude with Christian rappers who have come before you. Listen to them. What made their albums hot? What made them classics? And I'm not just saying, like, for some people you might have started out with Lecrae, which is fine. He's introduced a lot of people to Christian rap. But there are people before him that you need to study. Learn how to make those classic albums and pay homage to the people who came before you. Another thing Kendrick says, he's talking about working with Dre. He said, Dr. Dre said, when the full album was done, he could just hear and know it's missing some hi-hats here. He can make you get back and ad-lib. There's no one better than Dre. And he's talking about working with Dr. Dre, with mixing and mastering, and how they would just stay up like all night and just work on one song, like they worked on the whole Swimming Pool song, and how the mixing and mastering was a long process just for this one song. Do we have that type of care for just the little stuff, for the hi-hats, for just the mixing and the mastering? A lot of albums I hear, they sound, just put it blunt, they sound terrible when it comes to mixing and mastering. They don't have that care, that concern for that. Like the engineers and the people they use. Sounds horrible. There needs to be a care. There needs to be a concern for the music, for the art that we're putting out. Let's see what else. This is Kendrick speaking. He says, I'm very hands-on with the producers, and that's why my projects come out so cohesive. I just don't go in there and just find a bunch of instrumentals and rap over them. I have a specific sound in my head I want to convey. I really sit down with producers. I come up with ideas and give them ideas. Truthfully, I should get co-production on these tracks. And it says, haha, it was a joke. But again, you see, Kendrick has a specific sound. He's working with these producers. He doesn't just say, okay, Just Blaze, just give me a hot beat, or this artist, give me a hot beat. He's working with these artists. He's written these lyrics, and there's a sound that not just I have these dope lyrics, but there's a sound that I'm going for. There's a sound, there's a mood that goes along with these lyrics. And I'll be honest, particularly with a lot of artists, I'm not going to name names, but that y'all celebrate these great lyricists, they don't have that hands-on and trying to convey a certain sound to go along with their lyrics. Now, I'm not saying, I think Shaolin's last album, I think he did, definitely. There was a certain mood and a certain sound that went along with those lyrics that he wanted to convey about God. There are definitely examples in Christian rap But a lot of times, a lot of artists, a lot of lyricists just rapping over beats, don't really have a certain sound. Like you hear, like I hear the lyrics, like it should be a certain beat that should go along with those lyrics. It should be a certain mood that should be conveyed with those lyrics. That you not only feel the lyrics, but you feel the beat. And he's working hands-on with these producers to get this certain sound. Because it's art to him. It's sort of like a movie. Like if you do it like one of my favorite directors, Quentin Tarantino, you know, I mean, when he does movies, there is like a mood or a setting that goes along. There's a soundtrack that goes along with those lyrics. And a lot of artists just care about the acting, but they don't care about like the background stuff or all the important things that goes along with what makes the art great. Then lastly, I want to say, man, he talks about, Kendrick says, I've been planning this for years. Everything was premeditated. I already knew what I wanted to talk about, what I wanted to convey. I had the album cover for years. I knew I was going to use it, and that it was the best description of what I was talking about in this album. It's been a long time coming. Everything we dwelled on is coming to light. To have an album that I have total creative control over is one of the best feelings in the world. I probably wouldn't even have been able to make a dark album if I didn't have creative control. That's why once some people get into a situation, they change their style. But I have creative control. Creative control. I mean, a lot of labels, people sign at labels, and Christian rap, we know what's going to happen. And people will use it, well, they're growing. No. Those labels have an influence. Once some people, and there's certain labels, I ain't going to name names, but certain labels people sign to it, you know they're going to go commercial. You know they're going to go pop. You know they're going to do this because these people, these labels, putting their money behind it, they want the album to sound a certain way. They don't want the artists as who they were before they signed. They wanted to make them into something else so they can make more units, and that's not necessarily a push more units, but that's not necessarily a bad thing per se. But Kendrick is saying, I have control of my art. I want it to be a certain way. I want to convey it a certain way. He had this vision for years of what this album is going to sound like. There's a lot of planning in it. Christian rappers need to have the same type of thing. Of course, ours, of course, will be more spiritual. I mean, we have to get a vision from God on how he wants his album to turn out. But he had this plan for years of how this album is going to sound, how it's going to be. And he had creative control. So again, man, I think that's just the tip of the iceberg. I would suggest you just read the whole article. But those are things I think we can learn from this album, man. That's my thoughts. Love to hear yours. Read the article. It's on Complex. I think it's complex.com. You know, the making of Good Kid, M.A.A.D. This is Proceed with Caution Blog. Kobe Sutton. I'm out. Triples.